Drywall damage can happen for a variety of reasons. In this case, there was corkboard glued to this wall. This was in the basement and it was, I guess, a makeshift office for someone. The corkboard over time started to soak up moisture, looked really bad, and started falling off the wall, and when it was peeled off, it was glued on with construction adhesive, so it took a lot of the paper of the drywall off. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to fix something really bad like this, and something much simpler like the stain left over from this leak upstairs. The first step of this project is going to be to protect this carpet. Now, I found this carpet shield at the store. I've never tried it before, but I'm going to give it a try for this project. The next step is to seal the wall using a good primer. Now, I've already sanded this down roughly, trying to get off any kind of the paper flakes or any bulges that are on it. This is the primer I'm going to use. I'm going to apply this onto the wall. Then the next step will be to go over it and actually skim coat the wall using spackle so that it starts to smooth out the surface. While I'm mixing this, I'll talk a little bit about the primer I'm using. This is an oil-based primer that's specifically designed to be able to coat over damaged walls like this. Once you have the primer mixed really well, it's time to pour it into a small roller container. Load up your paint roller with the primer, and then just roll it onto the wall. This primer is what the skim coat's going to have to stick to. If it doesn't coat the wall well, the skim coat's going to fall right off. So you want to make sure that you put this on pretty good. I'm actually going to do 2 coats to make sure that the wall has a solid coating. So while this is drying, we'll do the same process on the smaller stain on the upstairs ceiling. So the primer's dried overnight and it's ready for its first coat of skim coat over the top of it to smooth it out. Now, when mixing skim coat, I hear a lot of suggestions on how to do this. I don't know what's quite right. You'll hear pudding, you'll hear mayonnaise, you'll hear a bunch of stuff, but the key is basically you take a big batch of all-purpose joint compound and you mix it with a little bit of water until you get something that just barely sticks to the trowel. So I'm going to take some of this and we can start putting it on the wall. Try to put it on smoothly to fill the bigger holes, and then we're gonna have to come back and put another coating on it. Once you have the joint compound up on the wall, it's time to take it off. Now, as you're doing this, you want to apply pressure on one side and bring it down or bring it up. And then you can keep moving along. That way you won't get lines like this in the actual joint compound. If you do get light ones, it's no big deal. We'll be able to scrape it off before the next coat. So just try to get it scraped down so it fills in most of the big holes. It won't be perfectly smooth at this point, so don't worry about it, but try to get it to a nice thin coating just to take over the really rough areas. you're going to see a lot of chatter marks, these striations, and this is because this wall was really bad shape, so it's really rough. So as I'm moving the taping knife across, it's bouncing and vibrating, causing these lines. This is okay for this coating. We'll smooth this out and the next coating should go a lot better. We'll let this dry and then we'll put on the second coat. In the meantime, I'm gonna go do the upstairs, which is fairly easy since that didn't have much damage. It was only a stain. The primer's dry upstairs, so we'll just put a quick single coat over the top and that'll be ready to go as well. So the joint compound has dried on the wall, and as kind of expected, it's pretty rough, but that's what happens with the first coat of this stuff. I spoke a little bit about the trowel lines when I was putting this coat down, and I said don't worry about them too much because they're pretty easy to clean up later. What we can do for those lines is just take a taping knife and just scrape them off. That will clean those lines up pretty well. Now, a lot of people will say you can go straight to doing the second coat right now, but a lot of the trowel marks and the bumps on this are gonna make more trowel marks and more bumpiness afterwards. So I like to lightly sand the whole thing down. It helps smooth the surface out and makes the second coat go on better. So now that the wall's looking much, much better, there's still some gouge marks and still some bumps. I'm gonna go ahead and put the second coat on. Now when I do the second coat, I'm doing it exactly the same as the first coat, using a 12-inch taping knife, and I'm just gonna apply it liberally and then take it back off. You'll also notice on this coat, the compound will go on a lot easier than it did on the first coat because the wall's a lot smoother now. Coat. Now the most important part is actually taking this off. Now as you're removing it, you're making it a smooth coat. You don't want it to be too thick because it will bubble and leave marks. So you want to kind of make it just so it starts to cover and smooth out the surface. I'm going to run the taping knife slowly down the sides, making sure I only put pressure on one side. That's going to leave a mark in one place, and then I'm going to go across and clear it all out. So the second coat is done. At this point, it's going to start looking much, much better. There's still going to be some marks and there's still going to be some lines from the trowel. Don't worry about that. We're still going to put at least a third coat, sometimes a fourth coat, depending on how bad the wall is. So we're going to cut this back down, all the edges, and resand it before we do another coat. So at this point, we're just going to let this dry and then we'll come back to it later. So coat 2 is now dry, and I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to use the small taping knife just to knock down any edges left over from putting the last coat of skim coat on. And I'm also going to do another quick sanding of the wall. Those of you that are really good at skim coating might not need to do this step anymore because people who are good at it don't leave too many ridges, don't leave too many spots. I'm not that great at it, so I'm going to do a quick sanding, plus this is a small wall. They're probably starting to look a little bit like a snowman right now, but this stuff really kicks off a lot of dust. So it's important while you're sanding to wear a respirator or some kind of dust protection on your face so you don't breathe it in. I did that. I didn't show it in the video because I didn't show the whole sanding process, but definitely do that. Now the wall is pretty smooth. So I think it's only going to take 3 coats. So I'll put the third and final coat on now, and then we'll let it dry, and then we can get to priming and painting this wall. When you're doing this final coat, there's one really important thing. This coat should be really thin. It's just to smooth out any fine lines in the texture and to make sure the whole wall is very smooth. So you want to make sure you put it on really thinly. Also, you might want to try going in a different direction. The reason is if it builds up too much in one way, you'll start to get a wavering or a little lumps across the wall. So by going into the other direction, you'll even that out. Another thing is you're going to want to feather it into the existing wall as well. That way, once it's painted, it all looks seamless. It's time to check this upstairs leak. And it's nice and smooth now. The joint compound has been sanded down. It doesn't need another coat, but some of the stain is still showing through. So I think I'm gonna have to hit this with a couple more coats of primer before we go and paint it. So I'll hit it with one now and we'll do another one later. Alright, so the final coat of skim coat, this is coat 3, has dried. I've scraped down the ridges and I've lightly sanded the whole wall. It's now nice and smooth. It's a little dusty. I'll just wipe this down with a slightly damp rag and then we will go ahead and prime it. Okay, now that the wall is wiped down, the primer is ready to go on. So I used an oil-based primer to seal the wall that was damaged and then coat over it, but since this is just now clean joint compound skim coat on it, I can use any kind of a primer to seal this up and then get it ready for paint. So I'm just using a standard water-based primer for this. It's now the next day. The primer is nice and dry, so it's time to just go ahead and paint. The wall is perfectly smooth. I took the primer and I painted over to the rest of the wall to kind of blend it in. Also, we're gonna repaint this whole room, so I'm gonna use a lighter color probably, so I'm gonna probably re-prime the whole room anyway. But it's ready to go. Now, for those of you who've been watching the video the whole way through, you know that there was also a project upstairs where I was fixing a stain in the ceiling from a previous patch job. Well, that became kind of a disaster. And that will be something for another video. In the meantime, this procedure will work for damaged drywall. As you can see here, it would have even worked in the ceiling upstairs had it not been for some hidden, disgusting, slimy gremlin that was in the works up there. But that's for another video. So if you want to see that or hear more from us or see more content, please subscribe below and hit the little bell button that will notify you whenever we have new videos. See you next time.